Welcome back. You are tuned in to Traders Nation. My pleasure to have with us here today best-selling author John Miller's with us today. This time around, Outstanding is the name of the book, 47 Ways to Make Your Organization Exceptional. John, welcome to Traders Nation. How are you today?
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Kurt. I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to have you here with us today. Hey, John, in your opinion, what skill sets are companies missing to make their organization exceptional? Because let's face it, they all don't have it together, do they?
No, they don't. Well, my background is I've called on organizations since 1986 as a sales guy selling training and then speaking and being an author. And I would go in and out of these companies, and I just kind of concluded, just in the past few months, I needed to write a book on the things the good companies do and maybe point out some of the bad things that lousy companies do. So we ended up with a list of 47 ways to make your organization exceptional.
Yeah.
We titled it Outstanding. And it goes from make sure if you're going to promote a manager, you train the manager to be a manager,
right,
to having a strong work ethic in the culture and no entitlement thinking. And then we talk about be fast, make decisions quickly, get rid of the red tape and the regulations and the committees.
Yeah.
And then we talk about seeking no culprits. Hey, no blame, because that just creates fear. So there's a lot of stuff in this book, Kurt.
Right. All right, so you're absolutely right. You've touched on a lot of different ways. You probably touched on, 5 or 6 out of 47. And I think everybody should get a copy of Outstanding to get the rest of those ideas. So what tools, John, should companies be using to keep their mission top of mind?
Well, that always comes down to repetition. Repetition is a motor of learning. Repetition is the motor of learning. And if I'm a manager, I need to be talking constantly to my people, not about what they call the vision,
right,
because the average employee does not care about what the organization is going to look like in 5 years. The average employee daily, day in and day out, they do intrinsically care about why they're doing their work. Now, of course, some don't. You always have some people who just have a job.
Yeah.
But, Steve, we need to keep the mission in front of people.
Nice.
So when we talk in the book about that little example when somebody asked me at a grocery store, do you want stamps or ice, when I was checking out, and I said, why do you ask me that? And she whispers to me, well, if I don't, I get written up.
Right.
Then she doesn't have the right purpose in mind.
Yeah.
So managers, talk daily to your people about the mission, why the company, why the organization exists, and why they do what they do. You see, people will do practically anything if they understand the purpose.
Yeah.
But too often in organizations, people are told to do something, they don't know why they're doing it.
John, I thought you were repetitious in what you said. You said mission on top of mind. I think you said that twice. Was that on purpose?
Repetition is a motor of learning, Kurt.
It sure is. And if you say it again, I'm not going to the next question. All right. So best way to get actions with lines of value, because, let's face it, there's got to be value in how people and employees accomplish their tasks during the work days, and they got to bring value to the table. So how do companies help employees and bring these key people into bringing value?
Well, again, back to focusing on the mission, not trying to be repetitive. But then part of that is good coaching.
Sure.
We've got a couple of stories in the book about coaching, and coaching has become this thing that we think is a long, developmental, personal improvement process. No, coaching is being with your people in the moment, watching them work, letting them know when they're doing it right, correcting them when they're off track.
Yeah. Coaching,
we have a section in this book on the power of training. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a guy selling training, I've seen a lot of companies make excuses for not training. And often it's because they don't know what the ROI is going to be. No, we train not because we're going to get 8% back in profit. We train because we deep inside believe in teaching people new skills to stay up with the changing world. So it's the mission, it's the coaching, it's the training, and it's the modeling.
Right.
We have a chapter in there about setting the tone.
Yeah.
We need to set the right cultural tone for our organization because people do tend to emulate what managers do.
Right.
So if we don't treat our people well, they're not going to treat the customer well.
Right, and you had a key word here, is you have to keep up to date on strategies and keep up to date on everything like that, because that's changing all the time. There's no doubt about that, John. John, let's move from the employee to your key people in your workforce. Let's move on to the company, because let's face it, companies have this tendency to get fat during the good times, and then, when it's bad, they trim their fat out. But shouldn't companies, if they want to stay consistently healthy, shouldn't they always be trimming their fat? Shouldn't they always be conscious of their budgets?
Well, that's what we believe. I actually asked Dave Ramsey, who's a radio and talk show host, that question once. I said, what do wealthy people do well with their money?
Right.
And he quickly said they bother to bother. And I said, Dave, explain that to me. He says, well, they bother to bother, which means they bother to take the time to manage their money and know where it's going and know where it is and know how it's being spent.
Yeah.
And then they end up later in life with money in the bank, whereas their friends are broke. They bother to bother. Well, I took that concept
Yeah.
and I said, well, good companies do the same thing, whether the times are lean, like an economy today, or times are flush, like they were back in 05, 06.
Yeah.
The strong companies are always bothering to bother. They watch the pennies and the dollars because they know that everything's a cycle. Economies go up, economies go down. And the disciplined ones will always be around to serve the marketplace by watching their dollars.
You always have to, and let's face it, a lot of companies today, they're not flushing cash, so they have to always be trimmed out, and especially if they want to grow, John. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? If you want to grow, you have to have that capital in place to get to where you want to go.
I learned a long time ago, Kurt, that cash is king.
Boy, isn't it ever.
Cash is king, and the organizations that were disciplined during the good times right now are still hiring,
Yeah.
they're still building products, they're
Sure.
still inventing, they're still buying equipment
Right.
because they were disciplined during the good times and didn't waste their money.
Right. Oh, now, my next question, John, refers to two things we've already talked about today. One, company growth, and, of course, two, people. So shouldn't companies, if they want to continue to grow, shouldn't companies give its people the proper tools rather than slogans?
Well, I sure believe so. Part of that comes from my speaking business. I do a lot of speaking, and sometimes people say, oh, you're a motivational speaker, and I want to say, no, don't call me that.
Right.
I don't get your people chanting and sweating.
Right.
There's no value in saying to people, well, we believe in you. You can do it. Be the best.
Yeah.
What we need to do is give people tools. And I love the simple metaphor we have in the book. You go out and you tell your person to cut down more trees. He's using a double-bladed axe. He's working 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
He thinks you're crazy.
Sure.
You hand him a chainsaw. He says, hey, no problem, boss. You wanted 20% more. I'll give you 30.
Right.
We need to give people tools, training, and coaching to meet the demands of the day.
Yeah, where do companies find these tools? Because a lot of companies are small businesses, and they don't necessarily have all those tools. Internet becoming a prominent source for information, good place for people to go to, for companies to go to?
Well, I've sold training for a long time,
Yeah.
and quite honestly, I've sold high-priced training.
Sure.
But a lot of businesses have said, we don't always need the high-priced training. We
Right.
can take a book
Yeah.
and study it
Right.
front to back and talk about it and then study it again
Yeah.
and repeat it and keep it in our people's minds through conversation.
Right.
I have seen more organizations take just my books and really study them and bring them to life. So that's not a lot of money when you buy, let's say you got 12 people, you buy 12 books. But you got to take it seriously, managers. You can't throw the book at people and say, okay, now change.
Right. My next question, Outstanding. Will Outstanding help people do that? Is this a tool that companies should get inexpensively, get multiple copies of to help them get to where they want to be?
Well, as the author, I would say yes, but as a trainer-teacher, I would say absolutely, because when a team sits down and studies this new book called Outstanding, and they go through chapter by chapter, this is where it's important. Then that's where you have some debate and some dialogue, and you say, how are we doing on number 12?
Right.
How are we doing on number 7?
Right.
How are we doing on 36?
Right.
And they tear apart the content, and they really look at it and say, how does it apply to us right now? Let's go out for a week, let's work on this one, and let's come back next week and talk about it, see how we're doing.
All right. I don't read that many books. I have read this one, and I'm telling you right now, and I don't endorse a lot of them either. And everybody should get a copy of Outstanding today. John, where can we get a copy of Outstanding?
Well, Kurt, I'm honored that you say that. Thank you. Well, it's just coming out, this week, and it's on Amazon, of course, online, book resellers, stores. My website is outstandingorganization.com. That's outstandingorganization.com, and the book should be everywhere.
All right, outstandingorganization.com, head out to there. And then, of course, get a copy of Outstanding today. Go to your favorite bookstore. It could be Amazon.com. It could be Barnes & Noble. Support that guy in the corner. He's in your community. Support him, too. He needs your business, no doubt, especially during today's economic times. We have John Miller with us today. John, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Kurt, thank you.
You're more than welcome. Again, the name of the book, Outstanding, 47 Ways to Make Your Organization Exceptional. Exceptional, I say.